Hello friends, welcome to Challenger Tabletop. I barely made it today. I was rushing back from work, just got in the door about 30 minutes ago, whipped up some quick dinner. Hopefully there's nothing stuck in my teeth. Just got my French press ready. Can't wait to have a sip of coffee. It's one of those days. Pretty tired. Worked outside for 8 hours, I think, today. And now we can relax and paint some miniatures. And hopefully you're all doing some hobby time tonight too. Or just having a restful evening. I should remind myself I can slow down now. Well, let's see. I guess I should get this light out of the way. We've got a fun miniature to paint. Another custom kit bash for my Genestealer cults. So it's been Genestealer cult week, kind of to go with the codex coming out. And now that I think about it, I think I have a name tag for this little guy I'm about to paint. Well, while I'm getting that out, let's take a look at the miniature. I have a little video of him here. And here you can see my custom kit bashed Biophagus, I really don't know how to say it. Fun little character for Genestealer cults. Decided to kit bash one to go with my Aberrants after watching a Zara Kane Genestealer cults video that was talking about the how do you call it, sort of aberrant smash style of playing Genestealer cults. Can't Can't seem to find the name tag I'm looking for. Of course, it'll be the very last one I look at, which does make sense if you think about it. But no, I didn't come up with it. Guess I'm gonna have to dump them out. Well, let's go ahead and switch to the painting cam here. You guys can watch while I dig through my name tags. Here we have some that I've ordered from versatileterrain.co.uk. Just gonna go ahead and throw them back in the box as I look through them here. A bunch of them named after YouTubers, 40K YouTubers. Here we go, Brian. That's the one I was looking for. Thought I could name this guy after Brian from Tabletop Titans. Enjoy that channel. So we got my little name tag here. We'll zoom in on it. There you go. And let's go ahead and glue this onto our miniature. Just gonna use a little super glue on the back. And today's discussion topic is Games Workshop specialist games. So the games they produce besides Warhammer and Age of Sigmar, and what else do they have now? Is Warcry separate from Age of Sigmar? And well, I guess maybe that's a specialty game. I'm not specialist game. I'm not sure. All right, there we go. Got that glued on the base. And I guess I'll just show you guys. Here's our miniature again. The Genestealer Cult's Biophagus. He's like a sort of a mad scientist. And I actually don't really care for the default model, and I'm very happy with my kit bash here. He carries a weapon called an is it an injector goad, something like that. Basically, it's a sort of injection staff that has all kinds of toxins and serums in it. And he also carries an auto pistol, which I decided to go ahead and put in his right hand. And I went ahead and made a little backpack full of his serums and toxins, and has a little feeder tube going up to his injector goad there. Hey, Bionic Sheep, good to see you. Welcome. Titanicus, Battlefleet Gothic, out of print, Blood Bowl, Necromunda, Kill Team. Yeah, good start. I've actually got the Games Workshop wiki open, so you can go through it with me if you want, while we go pretty much alphabetical through each different, well, let's see how they're organized here. Miniature games, starting with their main stuff, and then other genres. Then we've got out-of-print games in the Warhammer Fantasy universe, Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40K, and then a few other specialist games, also divided by universe, and then Forge World and licensed games, things that they produced with other companies. So yeah, it's a pretty huge list, and we'll be taking our time as we talk about these. But welcome, Bionic. Do you play any of these specialist games, or have you collected any in the past? Let's see. I have Warhammer 40K. I collected Warhammer Fantasy back in the day. And what else? I have a little bit of Lord of the Rings, or The Hobbit, Middle Earth, whatever they call that game. They changed its name, which was a terrible idea. You have most of them. That's awesome. Well, I bet there will be a few we touch on today that you don't have. Just a prediction. Did you collect any Necromunda? I guess I should say that's another one I have. I've never played, but I have a few. I have one gang, I guess. They are House Van Sars, and I painted them, or converted them actually, to be Genestealer Cult's Neophyte hybrids. So every once in a while I use them in a game of Warhammer 40K, but usually I don't need them. I have a lot of Neophytes, honestly, and before that I used them as Space Marine Scouts. You do? Oh, cool, Bionic. What gangs do you collect? And have you painted them? And have you played? Very curious. Alright, we got that name tag glued on a little bit better there. Well, let's dive on in and start painting this guy. Probably going to start with our flesh tones. Suppose I put all my paints away after painting last night. I don't know why. Good thing all the ones I need are going to be right at the top. Let's see here. Silver, gold. Probably need some red and green on this guy with all his little vials and stuff. I haven't decided for sure if I'm going to make some transparent. I guess I will. Well, I'm getting out a ton of different paints. I don't know if I'll need them all, but maybe. So Bionic Sheep says collects Escher, Orlocks, primarily both, partially painted, but sadly not done yet. Well, always fun to have something left to paint, I guess. Otherwise, you have to buy more models. Kidding. Let's see, that's what I'm looking for. Some Caliban green, some Flash Dance yellow. Alright, I think we're about ready to get started on this guy. It would be fun to learn Necromunda. Maybe, I don't know. The game I most want to learn right now is Middle-earth Fantasy Battles, or the Hobbit Miniatures Battles game, whatever it's called. And I had an invite to go learn it at a hobby shop, but between the pandemic and being busy, I just didn't make it. Alright, well, let's start with some Screamer Pink and go ahead and paint this guy's face and hands. Or maybe he's wearing gloves. Let's see. Let's take a second to examine this model, shall we? So he's wearing kind of, well, he's based on a Delaque ganger from Necromunda. So he's wearing a sort of long trench coat, which I'll paint gray with brown wash. And he has his staff handle wrapped. I think we'll do that just leather brown with probably a silver steel staff with a gold icon. I wonder if I should maybe do this feeder tube white, like it's, what do you call those kind of plastic tubes? Let's see here. I think I'll paint the little straps on the side of his jacket brown. Gun, probably black. Maybe a silver barrel. And he does have some little shoulder pads and things on his jacket. I'll pick those out in silver. And then his breathing apparatus, I'm thinking probably black. I did stick a little box down here on his belt, so it looks like he does have his breathing tube connected to something. And then what about the canisters on his back? They are from a Imperial Guard flamethrower. I think I'll go for a sort of brass bronze type color on those. And looks like this should be transparent, and same with this little one over here. So maybe I'll paint some liquids in there and see if I can make it look like clear glass. And he has like a little light. I figured it's for performing surgeries and stuff on the battlefield. He's a doctor, right? And we'll paint his little belt buckle gold. Alright, I think I got a good plan worked out here. Let's get into it. Starting with the face. Getting out my brushes. We'll start with the good old small base brush. Get a little water on here. Are you doing some hobby stuff tonight, Bionic Sheep? And if so, what you working on? And let's see, I'll get my notes ready to talk about these. So, miniature games. Of course, now we've got their current core games are Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40k, and Middle-earth strategy battle game. If you're wondering what we're talking about, these are games made by Games Workshop, the company in Nottingham, England, which has been making Warhammer 40k since the late 80s. Started as Rogue Trader. And we are painting a Warhammer 40k miniature right here, but it's a kit bash, so it's made from multiple different kits, including some pieces from a Necromunda model, which is one of their specialty games. So we're going to be talking about basically all the games other than those main three: Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar, or Warhammer Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40,000, and Middle-earth strategy battle game. Is that what they're calling it now? Thought it was something like that. So I guess they changed the name of that one twice, because it started out as I think Middle-earth strategy battle game, and then they changed the name to The Hobbit strategy battle game, I think, and then now if they changed it back to Middle-earth. Not exactly sure. Did you pick up any Middle-earth miniatures, Bionic? And if so, which ones did you go for? I did get a starter set of, or like a single box of Uruk-hai Raiders. And whatever the main raider is, Ulag or something, I got him in metal. And let's see, the Fellowship, and I got some Hobbits, and I got some Lorien Elves. So I have 4 different collections. I kind of had the idea to get a couple different factions so you could play them against each other. Have it as a game to sort of invite people over to play, which they wouldn't necessarily have to collect their own armies for. Let's turn up my painting light here. That's better. Alright, getting a good start on this guy. It looks like he's wearing gloves on both arms and sleeves, so that's all for exposed skin. We'll give that some highlights and then a wash of Carroburg Crimson in a bit. I think let's go ahead and paint some Balthazar gold on his backpack. This is really more like a brassy, bronzy kind of gold. Bionic says, I did a lot of Dwarves and Rohan back in the day with the initial Lord of the Rings game, around 2002, 2003. Has it been that long already? Wow, 2002 is 20 years ago now. Amazing to think the Lord of the Rings movies have been out that long, much less the miniatures game. Probably came out not too long after the movies. When did The Hobbit, or when did the Lord of the Rings movies come out? Must have been early 2000s? You're feeling it, huh, Bionic? Yeah, I'm still feeling pretty young and spry. Doing construction work has been pretty fun. Getting a good workout that way. Couldn't really get myself to work out on the regular otherwise. But getting paid to do it is nice. Carried some heavy ladders around today. Well, let's get into... the movies came out around 2001, 2002, 2003? I don't know if you're right, because Star Wars Episode 1 came out in 2000. It seems like Lord of the Rings was significantly after that, but I could be wrong. We'll have to look that up later. Well, let's move on to some other games. So, the next following games are, I think, currently in production, so they're not out of print, and these are what I would call specialist games. We're really going to take specialist games for this purpose of this conversation to mean anything besides Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40k, and Middle-earth. And so, starting off alphabetically, in terms of other specialist games that they have currently in production or in print, we have hurrah for Google. Oh, Wikipedia says they came out in 2001, 2002, 2003. Wow. Huh. That does surprise me. Doesn't seem like it was that long ago they came out, but maybe it is. My DVD sets are pretty beat up. So, first off, we're going to bring up Adeptus Titanicus. So this is a game in the Warhammer 40k universe where you fight with the Titans. Titans in 40k, of course, are like walking robots piloted by a crew that are the size of buildings, basically. And the Adeptus Titanicus models are not to scale with Warhammer 40k. They are like just a couple inches high, and so it seems like it's kind of similar to the scale of the old Epic 40,000, doesn't it? You familiar with Epic? We'll probably get to it in a minute. But Epic back in the day was the Warhammer 40k specialist game that was based on huge epic battles with many more troops and much bigger vehicles than regular Warhammer, back when Warhammer really was more of a skirmish game. Bionic says Star Wars prequels were 1999, 2002, and 2005. So interesting. So that would mean Attack of the Clones and The Two Towers came out in the same year. Oh man, I didn't remember that, but must have been quite a year, 2002. I'm sure a few people would be happy to time travel back to 2002 these days. Which reminds me of 12 Monkeys. Did you ever see that movie? Where somebody time travels back to the 90s from viral apocalypse in the future. It seems like kind of one of those movies that could be coming true a little bit. I don't know if people are aware, but of course the pandemic that we're in could get much, much worse if one of these super virulent strains or super contagious strains became super deadly, which could happen the way viruses mutate. It's not like things are necessarily on the mend already. I don't know if you ever played the video game where, I don't know if it was I don't think it was called Pandemic, was it? But there's a video game where you play a virus and you try to wipe out the human population, and the best strategy was to start by trying to spread to every country to make yourself harder to wipe out and quarantine. And from there, it was a lot easier to become deadly and wipe everybody out. So it is possible. Of course, knock on wood there. Won't come to pass. When the pandemic started, oh, Plague Incorporated, great game. So you have played it, Bionic. That's cool. When the pandemic started, I was reading Stephen King's book, The Stand, and I was quite enjoying it, and it was starting with a sort of a biological outbreak of a highly contagious sort of super flu, and as soon as the actual pandemic started, I had this sort of uncanny feeling that like the book I was reading had kind of come to life or come true, and that was not fun. So I put the book down, but I did watch the movie a little bit later. I will finish it eventually. But that was pretty fun. You ever read Stephen King? And if so, do you have a favorite? I read his time travel one where someone goes back in time to save JFK. I think it's called something like 11/22/63. And I've read some others. Read Cujo back in the day. It was so-so. I picked up The Dark Tower when I was working at a bookstore probably around 2002, but I wasn't impressed by it. Seemed creative, seemed like he was really letting his imagination tell the story, but it also just didn't really seem for me. Maybe I'll give that one another try at some point. And I've read some of his short stories. I think he did one called something like The 6 O'Clock People, where certain people can see aliens, kind of like they live. That was a fun one. All right. Well, we got some Balthazar Gold on there. Maybe I'll do also some of the rims on these other little things. Let's get some more water. Can't say I have. Oh, okay. Well, if you're going to read a Stephen King book, I would say my favorite so far is 11/22/63. That's a good one. Time travel, where a guy discovers a door that leads to the past. Someone else tells him about it, shows it to him, and the other guy who showed it to him has sort of like grown suddenly old and mysteriously old. And so, oh, I should plug in my phone. And so it turns out that when you travel back in time through this door, when you come back, you return to the same moment in time that you went in. So the world is the same as you left it, basically, but you still age while you're in the past. And the same way, every time you go through the door to the past, you come out in the same time in the past. So you can essentially have a do-over of everything you did in the past, because it will sort of be forgotten. And the moment that you come out in the past is something like 1961. And so eventually the main character gets the idea to try and save JFK from being assassinated about 3 years after the moment he travels back to. So Adeptus Titanicus didn't really interest me that much. I do think Titans are cool. I did enjoy playing the sort of Titan-like video game MechWarrior Online. I do suggest that one. Fun multiplayer free MechWarrior game. But Adeptus Titanicus didn't really grab me. I would rather actually get a Titan for Warhammer 40k, like a Warhound. I think that would be super fun. So moving on, we've got Aeronautica Imperialis. So this is a Forge World game where you basically control various aircraft in the Warhammer 40k universe. And I do like the Warhammer 40k aircraft, and I would like to get one for my Imperial Guard, maybe. Like the Marauder Bomber, I think is quite cool. And I did actually order some miniatures to use as aircraft for my Imperial Guard, but I went with something a little bit anachronistic. I got a couple of model kits of the Russian attack helicopter, the Hind. I don't know if it's like a... I really don't know the number designation of it. Is it Mi-29 or something? But I think the Hind is pretty cool looking and kind of strange looking also, and wouldn't be that out of place in the Warhammer 40k universe. Of course, there are not any helicopters. Well, I guess there are helicopters in Warhammer 40k, just not for the Imperial Guard. Of course, the Orcs have Defcoptas and the Shinork Warcopter Forge World model. But where else are there some helicopters? I don't think the Mechanicus have one. Maybe it's just the Orcs. They're the only ones I can think of off the top of my head. But Aeronautica Imperialis seems like another game sort of in the style of Adeptus Titanicus. You know, just sort of like a specialty battle game focused on one element of warfare in the 41st millennium. And kind of fun for people who like, you know, miniature aircraft games and are looking for something like that. I think I noticed that one of the former Warhammer 40k designers, was it Jarvis Johnson, or I forget who made a game sort of similar to that. Bonix says, hovercraft like Valkyries and Vultures perform basically the same role though. Yes, I'm going to be using my helicopters as Vulture gunships. Because the Hind loadout is pretty similar to the Vulture, with the rocket pods and a couple missiles and heavy bolter taking the place of the sort of nose machine gun. And I got a couple that I thought were going to work, but they were 1/72nd scale, and it just ended up being too small. They would be maybe appropriate for like Ratlings, the sort of 40k version of Hobbits, but they were just a bit too small for Imperial Guard pilots. So I went ahead and got some that are 1/48 scale, I think, and they're going to arrive in a day or two, so should be fun putting those together, maybe. I don't know. Don't think I'll build them on stream, but might paint them on stream. Probably not. I don't know. Go on to add a little bit of the same color to the injector goad here. What else are they making these days? Blood Bowl is back. Blood Bowl was out of print for a long time, wasn't it? And then they brought it back. Does it have a date here? Revived in 2016 with a second season edition in 2020. So just just over a year ago now, they got a second season. I did notice that when I was browsing some Blood Bowl stuff on eBay the other day. And Blood Bowl is a game I would say I've thought pretty seriously, somewhat seriously about picking up. I did go as far as to pick out like a favorite team, or at least to decide, I think, what team I would play if I did pick it up. Do you play Blood Bowl, or do you have a team, Bionic? And if not, which team do you think you'd go for? I kind of settled on Chaos as a cool-looking team, particularly because they have the Beastmen, and I think they would just sort of lend themselves to a sort of a football or rugby style game. And I like the look of them, and I think they'd be fun to paint. And I actually don't play Chaos at all in 40k, so it would be also a bit different. Back in the Warhammer Fantasy days, I collected Dark Elves, some Dwarves, some Bretonnia, and my brother picked me up like a complete painted Goblin army on eBay. So I've never gotten into Chaos. Don't play them in 40k either. Bonix says, yep, working on almost all the teams currently. Whoa, cool. And have Aeronautica 2, working on Orcs. Are you working on Orcs for Aeronautica Imperialis? That sounds really cool. How come I didn't ever see any Orc models for that game? Mostly I've seen like Imperium and Eldar. I quite like the Chaos flyers. They have that cool like Hellblade, I think it's called. And they also get a lot of the cool Imperial ones like the Fire Raptor. And probably, do they get Thunderhawk, I assume? Not sure if Chaos does or not. And I assume they also get like Helldrakes in Aeronautica. That would be kind of cool. Having some little dragons flying around, roasting people's fighter planes. I've been on kind of a flyer kick recently for 40k. I made a couple of Orc X-Wings as proxy DACA jets. And painted up a couple of Storm Talon gunships, which I'm very proud of. I have to decide here if the top of this little vial is going to be clear so you can see in, or if it's going to be metal all on the top. I think let's make it metal on top, like a cap. So Bionic says Space Marines do. No official Chaos models yet, I don't think. New releases anyways. Yeah, I suppose they could still add to it as the game is currently in print. Let's see, did I ask you if you're doing some hobby stuff tonight, Bionic? What you working on? Or just chilling? So Blood Bowl, I don't know if we should describe it for people. It's basically just like a football type game played with fantasy teams, like sort of out of the Lord of the Rings, Warhammer Fantasy sort of pantheon. So you've got dwarves playing a game against orcs, etc., and then like players will get wounded and injured and killed because it's like super violent, sort of like no holds barred. There are referees, but they're like biased referees or something, I noticed. Have you played the game? Do you know how it works? I was curious about those biased referees. How do they work? Let's see. I guess we're gonna go with the same color on these injectors on top. Bionic says doing some cleanup and reorganizing of the hobby space. Back to shambling undead Blood Bowl team tomorrow. Cool. And have you played Blood Bowl yet? Working on every team. That's incredible. After Blood Bowl, our next game is Necromunda. Cool, alright. Well, yeah, it barely qualifies as a specialist game, but I guess it does. Necromunda seems like it's enjoying its resurgence. Bionic says you can bribe them to have a chance at ignoring your foul play rolls. That's fun. That's funny. So, Necromunda... Bionic says, I played the original release, haven't tried the second edition yet. Alright, cool. So by second edition, I assume you mean the one that came out in 2016, not second season edition from 2020. It's one I've never played, but it looks fun. It looks like a fun, casual game, you know, not as hardcore as Warhammer 40k or Age of Sigmar. The fact that you just have like a team of maybe 16 models to paint kind of puts it on par with games like Necromunda, which is a gang warfare game set on the planet Necromunda in the Warhammer 40k universe. And Necromunda is a planet that's totally covered in cities, so it's kind of like, was it Coruscant in the Star Wars universe? Towering skyscrapers and miles of sewers and underpassages and whatever else for down below. And you play basically gangs of scavengers fighting amongst the darkness in the Underhive. And Bionic said he collects Escher and Orlok, I think he said. And I had Van Sars, who are kind of like the sort of high-tech gang. Generally, the level of technology in the Underhive is sort of lower than that of the military forces of Warhammer 40k, as people are just sort of scrounging and fighting for whatever they can get. But the Van Sars are sort of the exception, or one of the exceptions, as they're more sort of, their theme is that they have high technology. I assume there's some sort of like trading guild or something, or else they're just very well connected. And this is a Necromunda model I'm painting, and he is a bit big compared to like a Genestealer Cult Neophyte hybrid. Here you can see the size difference to a Genestealer Cult Neophyte. And the Delaque Gangers may be particularly large, but it works for me because my Hive Cult is the Twisted Helix, and they're sort of like bigger and stronger than other Genestealer cults, so I don't mind if some of my characters are a little bit big. Alright, there we go. Necromunda seems fun. I would like to learn it because I do already have a gang that's painted. So Necromunda and the Middle-earth strategy battle game are definitely the two games that I'm ready to learn. Where I already have miniature collections for them, and they're already painted and everything. My Van Sars, I did change them or convert them into Genestealer Cult Neophyte hybrids, so they aren't exactly Necromunda models, but I could just play a Genestealer Cult gang, right? I don't see why not. Pretty sure other people have done Genestealer Cult in Necromunda as at least as like a homebrew. And I would just run them with the rules for Van Sars, I assume. Or maybe I could use rules from another gang, because their weapons aren't exactly high-tech, and I don't have any of the sort of special Van Sar characters. Pretty much everybody's equipped with auto guns. I have like one grenade launcher and a flamethrower, so I assume I could use those. Can you run a gang in Necromunda with like mostly auto guns? I assume you can. Back in the day, it seemed like you could pick your weapons, but you had to pay points for each one, kind of thing. Sort of like Warhammer 40k. So moving on from Necromunda, I guess I will just say that in general, Necromunda models make pretty good Warhammer 40k conversions or proxies. We have Warcry. Okay, so Warcry is a skirmish game set in the Age of Sigmar universe, released 2019. I've been hearing about Warcry, and I didn't know what the deal was with it. I kind of wondered, like, if they already replaced Age of Sigmar with something new, or what? And it sounds like it's just another game set in the same planet, kind of like Necromunda and 40k. Interesting. Well, maybe Warcry would be more tempting to me since, you know, I have kind of like a bitter taste in my mouth from Warhammer Fantasy getting cancelled, which I gather may be coming back itself in the form of a new game called Old World or something. But, so I never really wanted to collect Age of Sigmar since I had all these Warhammer Fantasy models kicking around. But Warcry sounds like maybe a little more tempting if it's a skirmish game. That makes me think fewer models, maybe easier to learn, easier to play, quicker. The main issue I have with Warcry and Age of Sigmar is just that I don't have like a connection to it. Like with Warhammer Fantasy, it was close enough to Lord of the Rings that you could kind of get your foot in the door to be interested in the game just from having an interest in fantasy in general. It was kind of generic fantasy in a way. But Age of Sigmar seemed like, well, they needed to make everything highly customized in order to copyright everything. That was, I assume, kind of the real reason that they discontinued Warhammer Fantasy. And the fact that they're, you know, Stormcast Eternals and you know, nothing was recognizable to me, I guess. So that was kind of my main stumbling block in terms of picking up Age of Sigmar. Do you collect Age of Sigmar or Warcry, and what factions, Bionic? Probably the only ones I'll recognize would be the Ghosts. I don't remember what they're called, but I've heard it several times. And the ones I just mentioned, Stormcast Eternals. Why can I not remember the name of that Ghost faction for Age of Sigmar? I have a friend who picked him up. Him and his wife both got into painting them. Nope, no interest in AOS. You and me both, Bionic. It's okay. I assume you prefer fantasy. Alright, so let's see. Warcry, Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team. So it is still a thing. I kind of had the impression Kill Team was discontinued for a minute and then they brought it back. Is that what happened? Kill Team is essentially a skirmish game for Warhammer 40k, which is not set on Necromunda. So it features, I assume, all the different Warhammer 40k factions that the strategy game, tabletop game has, but with much smaller miniature count. So you'll fight a battle or skirmish with like just what, 8 models or something. I think you have like a roster and you pick which ones you're going to use in the game. And I don't know, do things happen from game to game? Bonix says, did have a huge Orcs and Goblin army for fantasy back in the day. Oh man, I just remembered I need to move my water so it's not right next to the mic, because that's probably pretty annoying. Does that work? I think it does. Not the best place to have it. Let's try over here. This coffee is bringing me back to life. Plus the food I had right before this. I had some sort of like bean tacos. They were good. Well, shall I keep going with the metallics here and paint some gold on this guy? I think that sounds good. So Warhammer 40k Kill Team. One of the things that seemed cool to me about Kill Team is I kind of assumed I could just play it with my Warhammer 40k armies. Pick out a few of my coolest models that have the most character and run them as a kill team, I assume. But I guess my problem with Kill Team is that it seems like a lot of learning rules for a game where, you know, I already had to learn a lot of rules for 40k. I guess that's kind of my main issue with most of these specialist games, is that they don't seem to have a compatible rules set with the other games in the same universe. It would be great if you had to learn almost no extra rules to switch from 40k to Kill Team, or vice versa. Maybe just have it be like playing a custom mission or something for people who are already 40k players, but I don't know. Seems like it would take all afternoon to learn the rules, but maybe not. I don't know. Warhammer 40k, I think the rules probably seem really intimidating to people who haven't played yet. And then once you've played quite a bit, it's not too much to manage. I was trying to guess where to describe the difficulty of Warhammer 40k on a 1 to 10 scale. I said 3 to someone, but I was probably underestimating. Maybe it's more like a 5 or a 6 now in 9th edition. Maybe 8th edition would have been difficulty 3. But Kill Team looks fun, looks interesting. I have played some kind of Kill Team style games with Warhammer 40k units, where you just don't have to follow squad coherency and you play a little like 50-point game or something with just you know, a handful of models. But yeah, wasn't super cool, so maybe that's why Kill Team needs its own rule set. And Necromunda 2, I guess. And I suppose they're also kind of an opportunity for people at Games Workshop to experiment with their game design or practice their game design by writing up whole new rule sets, which is fun. I love designing games myself. I've wanted to be a game designer for a long time, and professionally I was a video game animator, and I kind of had the idea that as an animator I would be able to design games, but it turns out those are kind of different roles in a studio. As an animator, they just kind of want you to slave away on whatever they tell you and not produce any creative ideas that are not related to animation. And I found that like the people who are actually getting to invent the games that they make would be like the producers and the higher ups at the company, if not the people who actually founded it, as that is kind of the funnest part. So it kind of makes sense that if it's your company, you would pick the fun part. Or at least I find game design fun. I have designed some board game prototypes, and I made a video game called Time Hammer with a friend of mine, Daniel Quasar, did the music. He was in here in chat last night for a little bit. I think it was last night, and then had a little help also. Had a friend, Torgi, who wrote the prototype for the code, and then he got tired of working on it and I had to finish programming it, but I was able to figure out how his code worked and add a few new things. And I had one other helper, Daniel Rusnak, who programmed like a mini game for one of the levels. Mini game based on Lunar Lander. You ever see that old video game? That's super old. Lunar Lander, I want to say, goes back to like the 1980s. Early computers. Alright, moving on from Kill Team. Warhammer Underworlds. So this is one that I think I've heard of, but I actually don't know anything about it. It says, a game set in the Age of Sigmar setting, combining miniature gaming and deck building. Interesting. Well, that sounds creative. That sounds very fun. I guess I was going to say, the kind of game design I'm most interested in doing now is actually not video games so much, although I could go back to that at some point, I think. But 3D printed games is kind of what I'm interested in now, especially designing games that are like where you can 3D print everything you need to play, probably including miniatures. I think miniature games are fun, and I have designed some miniatures for 3D printing already. Mostly just taking people's scans of the Hero Quest miniatures from the Hero Quest game and putting them in like different poses or equipping them with different weapons and that kind of thing. But the idea of making a game where people can 3D print the miniatures and maybe also terrain or some kind of play set that the game takes place on, maybe a board, seems like a cool idea. Or just 3D printable board games, I think could be really fun. So that's kind of where my mind's at now as far as game design for the future. And Warhammer Underworld sounds interesting. A mix of collectible cards. Does it say? Deck building. A mix of deck building and miniatures. That sounds kind of interesting. I might have to look up like a battle report of that or something while I'm working overnight tonight. Doing some gold trim on this guy's cloak. His nameplate's going to be silver. So Warhammer Underworlds, that sounds pretty cool. Interesting they call it Warhammer Underworlds and not Age of Sigmar Underworlds. Okay, moving on, we've got out-of-print games in the Age of Sigmar universe. And looks like the only one is Warhammer Quest, Shadows over Hammerhall, released 2017, a dungeon crawl game within the Age of Sigmar universe. Despite sharing the Warhammer Quest brand, rules and setting are completely different than the original game. Okay, despite sharing the Warhammer Quest brand, rules and setting are completely different than the original game. Okay. But it sounds like the premise of a sort of dungeon crawler board game is kind of similar. I think Warhammer Quest was a board game and not an RPG, if I remember right. This guy has a lot of gold trim. Okay, let's see. Next up, Warhammer Fantasy Universe, discontinued specialty games, or specialist games. We've got Advanced Hero Quest starting us off. Interesting. So, Hero Quest, I don't know if you know about that game, was a licensed game made between Milton Bradley and Games Workshop. And it was very cool. Came out back in the 90s, I want to say. And I had it as a kid, and it was one of the things that was so great about it was it came with about maybe 40 or 50 miniatures. So I always loved games that came with enough miniatures to sort of set you up for Dungeons and Dragons or something. And I did eventually sort of cannibalize my set of Hero Quest to turn everything into Dungeons and Dragons miniatures. And it got to be pretty hard to find a complete set of Hero Quest, so a lot of people were making them, sort of rebuilding them by either buying multiple copies and trying to get a complete set that way, or else by 3D printing stuff, reprinting the cards, getting custom dice printed, that kind of stuff. And I wrote a letter to, what is Milton Bradley now? Hasbro. I wrote a letter to Hasbro customer service. When was this? I think 2019 maybe? Toward the end of 2019, telling them that they needed to get the rights to make Hero Quest again from Games Workshop, and that people would really love it. And I pointed out that, told them to look up the Hero Quest hashtag on Instagram and check out all the people who are going to great lengths to rebuild their copy of Hero Quest. Called it the greatest game Hasbro ever made. And I got a letter back saying there were currently no plans to reprint Hero Quest, but that my suggestion was going to be passed on along to the brand team. And it was just about 8 or 9 months later that we got the announcement of a crowdfunding campaign to re-release Hero Quest. So that was super exciting to me, and I really feel like it may have been my email to customer service that got the branding team to get the rights back from Games Workshop and actually reprint it. So pretty cool. I feel really good about having taken the time to write that, and kind of feel like I can take a little bit of credit for it. And so I can kind of tell what they had to do in order to re-release it. Looks like they had to redo all the art, and they had to remove any like Games Workshop IP from it, which pretty much was just the Famirs. The Famir is like a kind of a giant orc that monster that you really don't see anywhere else except in Hero Quest, and apparently it was invented by Games Workshop because it was removed for the re-release. And Famirs are really weird. If you want to laugh, look up their lore online. I'm not going to go into it here. But yeah, so Advanced Hero Quest was like a Games Workshop version of Hero Quest, I guess, that they made all by themselves without Hasbro, I guess, or without Milton Bradley. So that's kind of interesting. I never did play it, and it was more Warhammer Universe specifically than HeroQuest was, which felt more like a generic fantasy setting. I wonder if the original HeroQuest does have references to stuff from the Warhammer fantasy universe, besides the Famir. Oh, yeah, one of the 3D printable models I made for HeroQuest is the, what are they called? Squigs! That's my most popular download on Thingiverse. Is my squigs for HeroQuest. They did seem like they were kind of missing as far as a Warhammer Fantasy monster. Alright, did we get all the gold trim? I think so. Oh, let's paint the little butt of his staff here. Making pretty good progress on this guy. Making faster progress on this miniature than we are on this discussion topic. Kind of taking my time getting through these. So let's move on from Advanced HeroQuest. We've got Kerrunch. Kerrunch. A simplified version of Blood Bowl. Interesting. Doesn't have a release date listed for any of these. Man o' War. So I do remember this one. A game of naval combat in a fantasy world. 2 expansions were also released. Sea of Blood and Plague Fleet. I wonder if I'm thinking of the right one. So, Man o' War. Okay, and then there's also Dreadfleet. Came out in 2011. So, Man o' War is the one I'm thinking of. It was... so it's like an old school Warhammer Fantasy naval combat game, and I think one of the issues with the game was the ships were really tiny. I think they were too small, honestly. Do you remember Man o' War, Bionic, if you're still hanging out? I picked up maybe a couple of dragons for Man o' War, sort of like flying elf dragons, but I think those were the only models for it I ever picked up. But seemed like Dreadfleet was definitely kind of a revival of Man o' War. Wonder if I should give this guy gold trim on his gloves. Let's do it. Gold trim everywhere. Bionic, I remember Man o' War but never got into it, neither with Dreadfleet. I thought Dreadfleet looked cool though. I liked it was like a game in a box where you could just buy everything all at once. Whereas Man o' War, it seemed like it would be a pain to collect yet another faction for a different game. Bionic, too many small games that offer no support past a very limited initial release, and GW wonders why those games aren't successful. Yeah. I wouldn't have been surprised to see an expansion for that one, for Dreadfleet. And I wonder also what they're like, what they're, like how much success they're really going for with some of these games. Do they really expect them to like totally take off and everyone's going to be playing Kill Team or Dreadfleet or whatever? Or are they just like wanting to make it almost for fun? I guess you don't ever do anything for fun when you have shareholders. Alright, I think we are finally done on gold trim. Maybe we could paint his leather belts and his little breathing apparatus. I think we'll do his belts next. Bionic, I mean, people seem to like it, but after the first about a month, you couldn't get anything for them. Yeah, sounds about right. So I did pick up some XV88 Brown. Let's see, where did it get to? Here's the Gorthor Brown. Here we go. Let's see. All right, I think what we'll do is brown straps and his belt with some XV88 base paint. First time using this pot of paint. All right, where were we? Oh, I guess I scrolled to the wrong area here. Man of War. Okay, Mighty Warriors, another one I've never heard of. Mighty Warriors was a simplified version of Advanced Hero Quest. Okay, more of a light skirmish game using Advanced Hero Quest minis set in a dungeon. Dungeon Masters, a board game which played like a simplified version of Mighty Empires, in which players take the role of competing elven princes in Ulthuan. Interesting. So are those must be two different games. So Mighty Warriors. No, I don't remember that one at all. Guess it missed me. And Dragon Masters. Oh, okay. Dragon Masters, a board game which played like a simplified version of Mighty Empires. So I also don't know Mighty Empires. Interesting. I guess we'll come upon that one later in the list here. Dragon Masters. Well, those sound interesting, I guess. Simplified version of Advanced Hero Quest is kind of funny. I don't know. Maybe they had complaints that Advanced Hero Quest was too advanced. Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Oh, it's so sad to see this on their list of discontinued games. Bionic also never heard of those. So, of course, Warhammer Fantasy Battles was different than Age of Sigmar because it was set in the same world, but before like a world-ending cataclysm. And it was played with miniatures on square bases that fit together into blocks of troops and moved as a unit. For the most part, there were a few skirmishers, but for the most part, everything fought in a big block of troops. And yep, I think we all miss Warhammer Fantasy, and maybe it's coming back as in a new iteration soon. I heard something about Warhammer Old World or something. Have you heard about this, Bionic? Do you know about it? Are you looking forward to that? Is it going to mean you can break out your old Warhammer Fantasy Dwarves or whatever you have? Or did you get rid of all your Warhammer Fantasy stuff? And would you even be interested in digging that stuff out and playing square-based Warhammer Fantasy Battles again? Or are you kind of over it? I'm kind of in the middle. I think it would be fun to get some use out of the Warhammer Fantasy armies I have just kind of collecting dust. Like my Bretonnians that I painted as a Lannister army for like out of Game of Thrones. Bionic says, heard some rumors, nothing more. Yeah, I just heard from people in chat pretty much. That they're going to be coming out with a new Warhammer Fantasy game called something like Old World, and it's going to be a return to square bases, and it's going to be set like 1,000 years before Warhammer Fantasy, something like that. Bionic says, and focusing too much on Titanicus right now, and still have all my old orcs and goblins lent to my buddies since they're playing a lot of the fan edition 9th Age, I think it's called. Oh, so there's a fan edition of Warhammer Fantasy where you could still use the models called 9th Age. Cool. Okay, and it was orcs. Orcs and goblins. Cool. Well, that's fun. My brother got me a goblin army on eBay at some point when he was doing sort of eBay buy and sell as a side business. And it includes like that like goblin war boss riding on a chariot with the giant axe. I don't remember the name of the character. And some big units of goblins and some night goblins, a few fanatics, and I think some wolf riders maybe. So, and a catapult. So kind of a cool little goblin army. I don't think I ever got to play it. Maybe we did play a game with it when he got them for me. I think that was still back in the era of Warhammer Fantasy. We only played a couple games, and my brother said he still thinks about some mistake he made with the rules that let him get extra attacks or something like that he always felt guilty about. So funny, because like I don't even really remember the game that we played, but he's still thinking about some mistake he made that gave him an unfair advantage. I suppose we all have those things, that mistakes we've made or whatever, that we still think about years later that probably no one else but us cares about. Kind of funny. Every once in a while I do make a mistake in Warhammer 40k, and I always apologize, you know, as soon as I notice, even if it's like a week later, but usually then I forget about it. Oh yeah, we're going to paint the straps on his handle here. Thinking his gloves I'm going to do black. Black with gold trim sounds good. Okay, moving on from Warhammer Fantasy. Terror of the Lich Master. A set of 3 linked scenarios using Warhammer Fantasy battle setting and rules. Interesting. Warhammer Quest. A game of dungeon exploration and questing, effectively an updated version of Advanced Hero Quest. Okay. I think I remember what the box cover looked like for that. Yeah, Warhammer Quest I think is one of those games that you still see in the box sitting on people's shelves who collect a ton of Games Workshop stuff. Do you have a copy of one of these? Oh, Bonic says, yeah, my memory is extremely good. Only problem is it only lasts about 5 minutes. Bonic, do you have Warhammer Quest or Advanced Hero Quest? Any of those? I actually got the re-release of Hero Quest from Hasbro. I got the like super special edition, and it's sitting here in my room waiting for me to run out of Warhammer models to paint so I can paint all those. But yeah, sadly I've got way too many Warhammer models to paint, so I'm like never gonna get to it. And I don't really know if I have friends who would want to play it, so that also kind of slight damper. Bonic says, I do not. Okay. Let's see. Warhammer Quest. Warhammer Quest Silver Tower, released 2016, dungeon crawl game in the Age of Sigmar universe. Despite sharing the Warhammer Quest brand, rules and setting are completely different than the original game. Interesting. So we did pass another one of those as currently in print, didn't we? Warhammer Quest Shadows over Hammerhall and Warhammer Quest Silver Tower. Sounds like they should have both been in the Age of Sigmar section. Okay, so now we're getting into out-of-print games in the Warhammer 40k universe. And how come the first one is Adeptus Titanicus? The original game in the Epic series, which dealt solely with combat between titans. Oh, so I guess the new Adeptus Titanicus is actually a remake of the game that came out before Epic. Well, that kind of makes me wonder if the new Adeptus Titanicus is also going to lead into a re-release of Epic. That would be weird. Do you miss Epic, Bonic? Or have you ever played it? Do you have any old Epic miniatures floating around, or did you ever collect it? I only got one model for Epic, and it was Bonnick says, yep, AT-18 is a different game, though similar. So Adeptus Titanicus. And yeah, that's what a lot of people are hoping. Oh, people are hoping for Epic to come back, huh? I always thought those miniatures were like too small to paint. I guess that was my issue. Same problem I had with Manowar. I just thought, like, how do people paint these tiny things? Warhammer miniatures are already about as small as I can paint. But, and then again, I have more experience now. I perhaps wouldn't find them as intimidating as I did back in the day. So I guess Adeptus Titanicus was before Epic, and then we've got Advanced Space Crusade. All right, that's a pretty famous game, isn't it? Advanced Space Crusade introduced the Rainbow Warriors chapter of Space Marines, I'm pretty sure. And it was pretty much like Hero Quest in the Warhammer 40k universe, I guess, wouldn't you say? What does it say about it? It doesn't say anything about it. I guess it has its own wiki, but I assume you were fighting against Gene Stealers and Gene Stealer cults on board like Space Hulks. So kind of like a proto-Space Hulk also, I guess. And has very classic cover art with the Space Marine in the white armor shooting his bolt gun. Looks kind of like a blonde Sylvester Stallone. Kind of funny. Alright, what else do we need to do here? Should I give him a brown strap for his goggles? I'm thinking black would be more appropriate. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to paint brown. I don't think so. So we can rinse the brush. Advanced Space Crusade, alright. Assassinorum Execution Force. Interesting. So it must have been a standalone game based on assassins. It would be pretty cool if it came with all 4 of the classic assassins in one box. But I wonder. I assume it was a miniatures game. It doesn't give any further description of it, so guess that would be one to look up. Assassinorum Execution Force. Sounds kind of interesting. Would be surprised if it was maybe like a card game or something. Bombers over the Sulphur River. Board game using Epic miniatures. I assume it features orcs from the way they spelled bombers over the Sulphur River. So I guess that's an Epic spin-off. Then we've got Blackstone Fortress. So Blackstone Fortress is discontinued already. I feel like they were just releasing expansions for it like a year ago. So Blackstone Fortress is a dungeon crawl game set in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. So I guess that's kind of like the evolution of Space Crusade. And I'm trying to think if I have some Blackstone Fortress miniatures. I'm pretty sure I do. Or maybe I've just spent a lot of time looking at them online. I'm trying to think what I have miniatures wise that might be from Blackstone Fortress. Oh yes, I do have one. I have one miniature from Blackstone Fortress. It's the Navigator. Painted it as an astropath with a las pistol. I converted it for my Genestealer cult, but I'm going to be converting it again to be an astropath for my Imperial Guard. So yeah, Blackstone Fortress, I mostly looked at it as a way to get cool miniatures to use for 40k. And one of the things that's really neat about it is that I'm pretty sure almost all of them actually had 40k stats. So you could actually play them in a game of 40k. I thought that was really clever and really cool. Well, I think we're ready to paint some black now. Gonna use this on his gloves. And his little breathing apparatus. Let's do that first. So Blackstone Fortress looked interesting. I don't really know the lore of the Blackstone Fortresses, but I gather that there's something that's been described in Warhammer 40k fiction. And it kind of seems like maybe the Blackstone Fortress is some kind of mysterious thing floating in space that is enormous and can be explored, but people don't really know all of the secrets about it, where it came from or what it is. And you can find like weird alien technology on board. That's kind of my impression. And I never really was tempted to play Blackstone Fortress as a game in and of itself. Partly just for the whole reason of like yet another rule system to learn. And the expense of actually getting the box set. But the idea of playing an adventure game in the Warhammer 40k universe does sound kind of fun. Did you ever pick up Blackstone Fortress, Bionic? Are you saying you have some of those minis? I think a cool Warhammer adventure game would let you play as Space Marine or like any character from Warhammer 40k. That would be kind of cool. If I can be a Terminator, then maybe I'll think about it. I bet we're about to come to Space Hulk here. Or maybe we're not there yet alphabetically. I guess we're just in the B's for Blackstone. So next up, we've got Epic 40,000. We kind of touched on Epic. It's a game where you fight massive battles, but using really tiny little miniatures. And it seemed like it's compatible with Adeptus Titanicus, so you could have Titans blasting away at little tiny units of Space Marines and stuff like that. Which you can do on a much larger, slower scale in Warhammer 40k tabletop. I want to paint his little elbow pads black, but I don't want to mess up the trim I already did there. Bionic, oh, that was Epic. Blackstone Fortress looked interesting. It was on my list to get, but already had too many projects on the go. I hear that. Yeah, around the time Blackstone Fortress came out, I was probably starting up my Genestealer cults and getting really into painting all those and spending money on those, and not really, and I guess I haven't, you know, I have like friends who I play 40k with, but I no longer have like a group of like board game friends or D&D group to sort of play these kind of standalone games with. And when I did have a D&D group, I had a friend who did play 40k, and I was always trying to get him to play 40k with me, but he wasn't interested. That was sad. Epic 40k, Gorka Morka. That was a charming game, wasn't it? I feel like that was one of the first like really zany standalone games. So Gorka Morka was a sort of Mad Max style skirmish game with lots of like buggies and stuff. Fought between orcs on the planet Gorka Morka. Gork and Mork, of course, are the two gods that the orcs worship in Warhammer 40k. And so Gorka Morka is a planet where orcs are sort of like crash landed. And I guess they've named the planet after their two gods. And Gork and Mork are always fighting each other, and orcs are no different. With no one else to fight, they'll happily fight each other. So it seemed like, you know, put together your little war band of bikes and trucks and buggies and go head to head with somebody else's. And I think the only other faction you could play besides orcs was Digonobs. Alright, see you in a bit, Bionic. Digonobs in Gorka Morka were like humans who worshipped orcs and wanted to be orcs. And they're called Digas because the orcs would use them as slaves, I guess, and have them do menial labor like digging. And I think you could play Digonobs in Gorka Morka. It was either that or orcs, and maybe there was also some goblins or Gretchen as an option too. I'm not exactly sure. And Gorka Morka seems like it would be a perfect source for buggies and trucks for Warhammer 40k, but sadly the scale wasn't exactly right. Most of the Gorka Morka vehicles are like a bit small by today's standards, I would say. Alright, we got that glove painted pretty much. Let's see if I could get my paint watered down and get a little bit into that kind of crevice. There we go. And same thing here. All right. Lost Patrol. Lost Patrol seemed like another kind of standalone board game set in Warhammer 40k with Space Marine Scouts, I think, if I remember right. And I think it came with Space Marine Scout miniatures. And maybe they were fighting against Tyranids? Might have been like a tabletop game. I'm really not sure. But I have heard of it. Didn't make much of an impression. Didn't look like something I missed out on. Then we've got Shadow War Armageddon, an updated version of the Necromunda skirmish rule set using the current Warhammer 40k factions in place of Necromunda's human gangs. Interesting. So Shadow War Armageddon sounds like what turned into Kill Team. And sounds pretty similar. I guess I don't have to be too careful. We're going to do the gun black also. Kill Team Precursor. Okay, thanks, Bionic. Oh, you had a rule book for it. Oh, interesting. Next up, Space Fleet. Now, this surprises me because, of course, I've heard of Battlefleet Gothic, but I've never heard of Space Fleet. I wonder if it's similar or a precursor to that. It says, a simple spaceship combat game, later greatly expanded via White Dwarf magazine with material intended for the aborted Battleship Gothic, itself later relaunched as Battlefleet Gothic. Interesting. So, okay, yeah. So Space Fleet was an actual precursor to Battlefleet Gothic, it sounds like, basically. And it sounds like they started with Space Fleet, then they added a bunch of rules in White Dwarf, and it was going to be all tied together in a release called Battleship Gothic, but then that was aborted, and then eventually that all became Battlefleet Gothic, sounds like. Well, that's kind of interesting. I wonder what exactly happened there. I guess they felt like it wasn't quite ready for prime time. Needed to go back to the drawing board, as it were. Could have been an issue with the miniatures. Maybe they needed more time. And kind of interesting that then when they eventually did release it, it wasn't called Battleship Gothic, but instead Battlefleet Gothic. which I do think is a better name. So props to them for making that change. Oh, when we were talking about Aeronautica Imperialis, I could have mentioned I passed by the Air Museum here in Oregon, down in McMinnville today, on my way to this construction job I was doing. And I had to come driving back to get some parts. So it was nice my coworker bought me gas. But I ended up driving by the Flight Museum, like, what, 4 times. And every time I was looking out my window, trying to peer inside to see if I could spot the SR-71 they have there. I've heard many times that they have an SR-71 at the Air Museum in McMinnville. One of about 7 or so that are on display in the United States. And I have seen an SR-71 in person down in Tucson, Arizona, at the Air Museum down there. And it's my favorite plane, I think I can safely say. Very cool plane. Alright, I think we are ready to move on to Silver. Oh, let's just see if we can zap his little boots here. Oh, that's a tough reach. Taking advantage of the fact that my brush tip is a little bit fishtailed to get it in there. Bionic, you saw the SR-71? Did you see it in Tucson, Arizona? It's amazingly large. And just so cool looking. Such a unique design. Kind of scary looking. I think there was a version of the SR-71 that was actually designed to carry weapons too, but I don't think it ever went into production. Hard to say why not. Maybe because they were already getting ready to retire that model of plane, or perhaps they found a more elegant solution. I do wonder if, I assume you heard of the Star Wars program. The United States government was developing weapons for space at some point in like the 70s or 80s. Okay, yeah, that was the one you saw down in Arizona. Cool. Yeah, I used to go down to Arizona for Christmas too. Oh, neat. My dad's down there now. But the U.S. government Star Wars program, I heard about it, but I don't know everything that's been done as part of it. I do wonder if we have space-based weapons. I think we're not supposed to. You've heard of it, yeah. And I think there's like a international agreement not to put weapons in space or something like that. I don't know if that's being stuck to or worked around, or has it been abandoned or what. Seems like a good idea, not militarizing space. But of course hard to actually hold anybody to that, as it's not exactly easy to send like arms inspectors into space. And space is pretty big, I hear. Seems like, you know, wouldn't be too hard. Well, I don't know. There would be certainly issues to get past, but seems like self-replicating drones building themselves in space could be a problem in the future. Alright, I did go for white on this little feeder tube here. At least for now. I can always change the color if I want. Alright, let's paint some silver. So, where were we? Shadow Armageddon, Space Fleet. Oh yeah. And now, Space Hulk, finally. Oh, interesting. 4 editions were published. And there were expansions. Okay, so Deathwing, an expansion box set adding new Terminator weapons and a new campaign. Genestealer, an expansion box set adding rules for Genestealer hybrids and psychic powers. Ooh, cool. Space Hulk Campaigns, an expansion book released in both soft and hardcover, collecting reprinted 4 campaigns previously printed in White Dwarf. Interesting. So Space Hulk is a board game I bought. I bought the re-release, which came out, I think I've already forgotten, 2005 or something. 2007. But it comes with a bunch of Terminators and a bunch of Genestealers, and I've ended up turning all of the above into Warhammer 40k armies. So I took the Terminators from the most recent Space Hulk. They're Blood Angel Terminators, but I changed them all into Deathwing for my Dark Angels. And the Genestealers from the Space Hulk board game ended up becoming the core, or at least the starting point, for my Genestealer cult army. And so that's cool. It was nice to get basically, I don't know, about 30 miniatures in a box game that I was able to eventually turn, convert all of them into 40k models. Plus, there's some very fun, like, characterful models too. Like the Terminators all have really cool poses, and the Genestealers have much cooler poses than the standard 40k versions, in my opinion. Well, painting the syringes on his little injector goad here. Going silver. I've dropped this model a few times. I'm really lucky these haven't broken or snapped or whatever, or bent. Good super glue. Okay. So while I'm thinking about it, I think I'm going to go ahead and paint his little armor panels on his jacket. Has some down here under his butt, and then I know he has some on his shoulders. Speaking of flight, one thing I was thinking about today that I've thought looks fun is what's it called? Paragliding. Have you heard of that or seen it? Paragliding is where you have like a motor backpack with a big fan on it, and you have a parachute, and with those two things you can fly around. I like a YouTube channel called Tucker Gott. It's the name of a kid who's really into paragliding. A guy, I guess he's not a kid. And he makes it look really fun. And I can't help but picture myself, like after the apocalypse, paragliding to safety and then hunting animals from a paraglider with a rifle. Seems like it would be pretty effective. Flying around till you see like a herd of animals and then swooping down over them and picking one off. Of course, you'd have to find a place to land and then deal with cleaning the carcass and everything, but still that's my fantasy. Of course, you'd make a ton of noise and you'd probably have people trying to shoot you out of the sky too, but do you ever fantasize about the sort of post-apocalyptic scenarios? I feel like all guys do this, at least if you've watched enough zombie movies and stuff, but maybe it's just me. And I guess I'll ask, what's your plan? Do you have one? I was watching, or I guess I was Google searching, how long can you survive inside, in like a nuclear situation if you can't breathe the air and you have to like totally shut your, like if you ziplocked your house basically, how long could you breathe the air until you suffocate? And the answer was a surprisingly long time, like 50 days or something like that. But of course that's like one person in a house with like average house with like no furniture at all, because all that takes up airspace. And then probably, you know, you'd have other people in the house with you, so. And then you probably also wouldn't be able to actually seal your house completely, so toxic air would get in. Bonic, it's nice being in the far north. Hardly any people. Yeah, alright, you're set. You're already in a good spot then. Although, of course, things might get tough for you if you couldn't get any supplies. You might run out of certain vitamins or things that you need for survival that you don't normally think about, like salt. Another thing I came across the other day was like the trace elements that you need to survive, and how you, like, people need certain like elements like cobalt or something in your body in very trace amounts, but some of them were actually like toxic if you had too much, or even like highly toxic like cobalt. Nah, I got fruit trees, animals, and all. Alright, sounds like you're pretty set. I read a book called Lucifer's Hammer, where like a comet is going to hit the earth and like everybody goes wild with looting, and then I think the comet does hit the earth and like it's like survival communities and stuff, and there's like battles between groups of survivors, and somebody's like reinventing toxic gas from World War I and stuff. And one of the things that he has to do is like make his own insulin to survive, so he somehow makes it from like from sheep. That was kind of interesting. I guess that would be a useful thing to learn how to make, is insulin, but then again you'd probably have bigger problems to worry about, unless you're diabetic. We had some friends of the family who went and tried to live off the grid in Canada back in like the 70s or 80s. And they didn't finish building their house, their log cabin, in time for winter. And then they were like running out of food during the winter, and the guy took a knife and hunted a like a baby moose or something. That's how they survived the winter. I used that as inspiration for a short story at one point. Alright, moving on from Space Hulk. Well, I guess I'll just say, if you aren't familiar, Space Hulk is a game where you control a squad of Terminators exploring a Space Hulk, which is an abandoned spaceship floating through space. And they are usually infected with or swarming with gene stealers, who are like a kind of alien that basically took over everyone who was on the ship and turned them all into gene stealers. Sounds like they were woefully unprepared. Yeah, they were like hippies back in the 70s who were woefully unprepared, it sounds like. They thought it would be easier than it was. They're just going to live off the land. What could go wrong? A lot, apparently. This was before that, what was it, Into the Wild or whatever, that documentary about the guy who disappeared in Alaska and then they found out he starved. Alright, I think I got all the armor plates on his coat. Maybe I'll put a little dry brush of silver on his gun. And let's do this little magazine silver. Oh, it's still kind of wet. Barrel. There we go. That looks good. What else was I going to paint silver that I forgot? Oh, I'm not sure I finished his staff. Let's take a look around. Oh yeah, there's one little spot here. I only played the actual board game Space Hulk about maybe once or twice before I went ahead and converted everything to Warhammer 40k bases and figured I'm probably never going to play that again. It wasn't as fun as I expected, but I bet some people have gotten good use out of that game. I guess I like the computer game versions of Space Hulk. I've played the original and the most recent one, Space Hulk Deathwing. So, Space Marine. The original epic scale game concerning troops and infantry. First edition was compatible with Adeptus Titanicus, second with Titan Legions. Which leads us to Titan Legions, an update of Adeptus Titanicus, effectively an expansion of Space Marine 2nd edition. Okay. Tyranid Attack, an introductory game reusing the boards from Advanced Space Crusade. I thought it was more like an expansion to Advanced Space Crusade. Interesting. If I saw, what would I pay for Space Crusade and Tyranid Attack if I saw them at a garage sale? If they were complete, I would probably pay $50 for Advanced Space Crusade, if that kind of gauges my interest level in it. You know, I'd be kind of curious to check it out. It seems like it could be fun, especially the idea of playing like a really retro 40k board game. And Tyranid Attack, if it's an introductory game, I don't know, it still sounds kind of cool. All right, and our last out-of-print Warhammer 40k specialty game is Ultramarines, an introductory game reusing the board from Space Hulk. Okay, sounds like an expansion again. I don't think I would be interested in picking up a copy of Space Hulk. If I saw the original Space Hulk board game, I would maybe pay $25 or $30 for it. Maybe $50 if it came with the Ultramarines expansion, but yeah, not super tempted. Or one of the other expansions like Deathwing or Genestealer or Space Hulk campaigns. Alright, well, let's move on to other specialist games. And starting in the Warhammer Fantasy Universe, we've got the one that we discussed a little bit earlier, Dreadfleet. Now, Dreadfleet to me looked like the ships were a better scale than Man of War. So right there, it looked like I would like the miniatures better. And the miniatures looked interesting, like they had a lot of character. I seem to remember Dreadfleet came with about maybe 10 different ships. And just from memory, I'm thinking that maybe they were like a mix of different factions. But I had fun looking at the sort of reviews of Dreadfleet, and I've never seen a game. Might be interesting to watch a game of Dreadfleet on YouTube. And somehow I feel like it could be kind of fun to play. But yeah, and even kind of fun to paint, because I think the ships were a little bigger. But I wouldn't want to have to get like, oh, I guess maybe it comes with a board. Because if I had to get like a special ocean mat, that seems like a pain. I've avoided so far getting like an ocean mat or a space mat. I pretty much just have my two-sided grass and city mat I use for 40k. And before that I was using felt, which I also did two-sided, pretty much the same colors. Well, yeah, so Dreadfleet was a naval-based combat-style board game, which was like came in a single box with a variety of ships, and maybe there was like a Kraken or something. Looked kind of fun, kind of interesting. Next up, we've got Mighty Empires, a hexagonal tile-based campaign supplement for Warhammer Fantasy. Interesting. Tile-based campaign supplement. Interesting. So I guess you'd be playing your standard Warhammer Fantasy battles, but now Mighty Empires would give you a campaign board to kind of use in conjunction with your games. Sounds kind of fun. All right, well, let's get a little bit of a lighter pink on this guy's forehead. The Biophagus. So I have a bunch of Genestealer aberrants to paint to go with this guy. They seem like they kind of work well together. And also, I think both of them are very good for my Hive cult that I play. I play Twisted Helix, and it seems like Twisted Helix pretty much gets like the best buffs for aberrants and also for this guy, the Biophagus. So that's kind of interesting. Trying to get kind of ready for the Codex. I have a Genestealer Cult Codex on order, but it's not going to arrive for about a week or two. So maybe I'll keep painting Genestealer Cult next week. See if I can get through my aberrants. That would be cool. Have them ready to go when the Codex arrives. I realize now I forgot to paint this guy's little glasses. Bionic Sheep says, sounds like they were woefully... Oh, yeah, that was earlier. So, Mighty Empires. Oh, and then Mordheim. I remember Mordheim. Mordheim was a skirmish game for Warhammer Fantasy, set in the city of Mordheim, which had been annihilated by a crashing comet or something like that. So you were venturing into this destroyed city with your little skirmish force to try and get shards of the comet, which was like a glowing green rock that was kind of scattered through the ruins and wreckage of the city. That was the sort of narrative background for the game, which I still remember. And I think something Mordheim did well was that kind of backstory. It really, I thought, was pretty evocative and kind of gave you a clear idea of what's going on in this game. And that was cool. Like if you're just going to play Necromunda, I get that it's like gang warfare, and granted there could be a lot of different kinds of stories you could tell with a game of Necromunda, but just off the top of my head, I wouldn't exactly know what you're doing as much as I would with Mordheim, where it was sort of more part of the premise. Well, I think this is a case of using too big a brush for these details, as kind of messed up a bit here. Went a bit wild with the black, so I guess I can clean that up a bit with the pink, but I should let it dry first. Maybe we are actually to the point of painting some of my little vials and toxins and stuff. I wonder what colors I should do them. I'm thinking I should do one color in one of these and another color, probably green and red, maybe switch those, and then also have the same colors divided between these two different kinds of canisters or syringes. So what would he want the most of? Probably red. So we'll do red in the back there. I don't know. With only one hose feeding them, it doesn't totally make sense that they'd be two different colors, but that's all right. Doesn't have to make sense. So I think let's start with green. And I think I've decided I don't want to bother with trying to make it look like the vials are half full and half transparent and have them at different angles or whatever. I'm just going to have the vials all be totally full of a color. That'll make it a little easier to paint. So we're going for a bright green here, mixing Dark Angels green and Flash Gitz yellow, and trying to make kind of a lime green. And then where do we want that? I think we're going to put it in this one over here. Maybe we should zoom in a bit more for this. See if I can hopefully keep them on camera. So going for a very bright lime green here. This is kind of a color accent for the model. And then we'll do kind of red-orange in the other canister. Ended up painting this whole model with this base brush. Guess I'm just being a little bit lazy. Probably should have brought out the small layer brush for some of this. Maybe even for this thing I'm doing right now. So Mordheim. It seems like Mordheim was cool because you could play with models from Warhammer Fantasy. But it also kind of lended itself to converting characters for it specifically. And I'm also not really sure, did Mordheim have its own miniatures that were specifically for the Mordheim game? I think it did. But I think you could play all of the different factions that were in Warhammer Fantasy in Mordheim. So Skaven, Undead, Empire, Dark Elves, etc. Alright, so there's that green, and then I think we'll do green in these two canisters on his injector goad. After Mordheim, we've got Warmaster, a game for fighting larger battles with smaller 10mm miniatures. I haven't heard of that, so it's another Warhammer Fantasy game, but played with smaller miniatures. Sounds kind of like Epic, but for Warhammer Fantasy. And I don't think I was aware that such a thing existed. Warmaster. So it sort of rings a bell. Sounds familiar. And then we've got Battlefleet Gothic. Okay, so now we're back in the Warhammer 40k universe. And we kind of talked about Battlefleet Gothic. Came up as we were talking about related games earlier. So this is the Space Fleet combat game for Warhammer 40k, and I was kind of under the impression it's coming back. I've been seeing a lot of people painting Battlefleet Gothic on Instagram. I wonder if there's also like a fan rule set for Battlefleet Gothic. Is it like fan supported now? Or are people just still playing the older version of the game? I wonder about that. I've never been tempted to play Battlefleet Gothic, as again, it just seems like yet another rule system to learn, yet another, game system to collect. But I do think it's kind of cool. And again, yeah, not wanting to get like a space, having to get like a space board or space mat. But it wouldn't be too hard to make your own. Black spray paint and some white splatter for stars, and you're pretty much done. All right, well, there's a nice kind of highlight color form there. Both the older and fan improved rule set. Oh, okay, thanks, Bionic. Cool. Have you got any Battlefleet Gothic? And if so, what faction? I guess it would be kind of tempting to collect Drukhari for Battlefleet Gothic, because my Drukhari army has kind of a fleet-based army fluff, I guess. You have tons? Oh, cool. Interesting. If you have Imperium, do you have Space Marines? And if so, what chapter have you painted them? My Drukhari are called the Cabal of the Void Hunter. And the lore that I came up with for them is that the Archon who controls the Cabal is from old Eldari nobility, and he kind of remembers the glory days of the Eldari Empire before everybody had to live in Kamra in the Webway, and he is sort of disgusted with the depths to which the Drukhari have sunk in their wickedness, and so he really tries to spend as much time as possible in real space away from the Dark City. And so I figure he probably has a fleet-based Cabal. Bionic says Imperial, Chaos, Marines, Orcs, and Eldar. Flesh Tearers to go with my, you guessed it, Flesh Tearers. Woohoo! Cool. Fun. We had another Flesh Tearers player on chat a while ago. Angerous Angel plays Blood Angels and Flesh Tearers, I believe. Very cool to meet another one. Oh, we're going to do red also on this other thing here. What do you call it? A canister, I guess. Battlefleet Gothic, I think one of the things that's most fun about it is that it seems like it kind of could fit together with playing games of Warhammer 40k in a narrative campaign where you know, fight games of 40k and then intersperse that with fighting games of Battlefleet Gothic to sort of expand the narrative into space and incorporate space battles into what's going on with the story. I have used the Space Hulk board before to basically create the interior of a spaceship in order to fight a Warhammer 40k game in space on a spaceship. That was kind of fun. Let's see. I think next we'll do just another coat on the light green areas, and then we'll start to highlight the red with some orange. This reminds me of Secret of the Ooze, the old Ninja Turtles sequel. That must be what he's got in here, ooze. Ninja Turtles was big when I was a kid. Mid-80s. Mid to late 80s, I guess. Well, we could probably move on from Battlefleet Gothic to Epic. So we've kind of touched on Epic already, but it was the mass battles, epic battles game featuring really tiny Warhammer 40k miniatures where you could have Titans blasting away at units of infantry and squads of land raiders and stuff like that. Look kind of fun, and it has kind of that same feeling of, like, you know, if you were playing a narrative, you could switch from playing Warhammer 40k to playing Epic in order to fight some really massive battle if the narrative called for it, as opposed to just playing like a game of Apocalypse style 40k. Which I was also like kind of disappointed to see that Apocalypse gets its own rules now, and it's not just like a game mode of Warhammer 40k like I would like it to be, because I don't want to learn new rules. But I suppose they try to make it better balanced for a huge game, like having people trade off doing activations rather than having one player shoot his whole army in a 5,000 point game before the other player gets to go. Could be a bit one-sided. This red was a bit too watery, and it's kind of pooling up at the bottom here. Guess that's all right. Let's highlight it with some orange. So I've got this Wild Rider red, which works really great with Wazdaka to be like an orange highlight. I think we'll mix a little bit into the red we were using. And start to apply this everywhere we had some red. Probably should have done a second coat of red first. Oh no, that looks good. I kind of like the idea he could be like sucking people's blood out with this syringe. And maybe this red canister on his back is all blood he's sucked out of people for his experiments. Inquisitor. Now this was one of the strangest ones to me. Inquisitor was a skirmish / role-playing game using larger 54mm more detailed miniatures and intended for older gamers. What are your thoughts on Inquisitor? It seems weird to me that the miniatures are larger. I occasionally see them for sale on eBay or somewhere. These sort of large Inquisitor models, but and I think they were almost all characters. But it just seems crazy to me that to have all of a sudden yet another scale for your miniatures, because you're either going to have an incredibly limited selection, or else you're going to have to remake like every single miniature from Warhammer as Inquisitor scale. Like, why? Why introduce another scale? Seemed like kind of crazy. And I've never met anyone who played it or collected it. I wonder if the person who had this bright idea got fired from Games Workshop or something. But yeah, what's the deal? I guess Inquisitor as a role-playing game I've heard of. So I suppose the miniatures were sort of intended to go with the role-playing game. But still, I still don't get why you would have them be in a different scale. Well, I'm not really happy with how this orange is looking on his back. It seems a little washed out to me in person. I think we'll just have to let it dry a bit and then try adding some more darker red. Maybe I should add some kind of like highlights to the green. Go for more of a yellow. Make it look kind of like it's glowing a little bit or something. And then we've got Space Hulk, a 2-player game of Space Marines vs. Tyranids. So it seems like we're just getting some of these listed over again. We already talked about Space Hulk. And then we've got the Lord of the Rings universe. Great Battles of Middle-earth. Oh, so these are specialty games, I guess. Specialist games, I guess. Great Battles of Middle-earth, The Battle of 5 Armies. A game for fighting larger battles with smaller 10mm miniatures. They did this for Lord of the Rings also. The game was named after and originally centered on the Battle of 5 Armies, one of the later scenes in The Hobbit. Yeah. Battle of 5 Armies is my favorite part of The Hobbit. Even though it's told in retrospect after Bilbo is like knocked unconscious at the beginning of the battle, and then he wakes up later and people sort of fill him in on what happened. He was invisible the whole time wearing the magic ring. But the description of the Battle of Five Armies is just epic to me. And it's got some really kind of poignant, sad parts, like Thorin getting wounded and some of the dwarves that you've had, you know, during this whole adventure die in the battle. So kind of grown up, you know, stuff happening for a kid. But it makes sense that people would die in a big battle with 5 armies fighting. And I think it would be kind of whitewashing the violence if nobody died. And I really can't stand the scene in the Lord of the Rings, or I mean in the Hobbit movie. I feel like they just totally bungled the Battle of Five Armies. And they even like made it its own movie, and they still ruined it. So I just despise the Hobbit for the way they messed up the Battle of Five Armies. And especially after, like, they did such a great job with the Lord of the Rings, making the battle scenes feel real. And they did such a great job with the CGI in the battle scenes where the armies looked real, and they had so many great costumes present in the battle scenes. To then have this Battle of Five Armies in The Hobbit, I just felt like it looked so fake, and the CGI armies looked so CGI. And I was just hugely disappointed, especially having had it be my favorite part of the book. To then see them mess it up so badly, it made it like worse. Because I really wanted to see it done justice, and compared to what those scenes could have been, I just feel like it was nowhere close. And plus they felt the need to like make huge changes to what was happening in the movie relative to the book, and I just feel like there was no reason for that. I mean, because what's described in the book is really epic, and in the movie you get Thorin, who's like the general of the dwarves, leaving the battlefield to go have a one-on-one duel with the general of the orcs. And that doesn't make sense for so many reasons. Like, first of all, like, the entire army's job is to protect the king. So, you know, even if he's going to fight on the battlefield, he's going to fight surrounded and protected by his dwarves, not go fight a one-on-one duel against the orc. And also, like, the orc general really isn't important to the point where he's not even a character in the book. And so the idea that the dwarf king who's super important to everybody, is going to go fight one-on-one against an orc we don't even care about, doesn't make any sense. And they did try to build him up in the movie and like make him more of a character. I think he was pulled out of the sort of appendix of Lord of the Rings. They figured out who this orc was, and then they tried to make him like really special, but that was just not needed. So never gonna forgive the people who made The Hobbit for that. All right, let's maybe get a little bit of a yellow highlight on this orange. Right at the top there. And just a little bit on each one here. Okay, we're getting pretty close. I guess we still have to do a couple of ink wash on this guy. And I did want to clean up his face a little bit also. Maybe we'll do the ink wash on his face first and then come add a highlight to it. I think we'll do that ink wash first because it needs the time to dry before we can come back and touch it up. So here we go, Carroburg Crimson. Gonna do this wash on the pink bits, which on this guy is just his face. And I see I also do need to paint the light on his backpack. There we go. Gonna just touch the top of his head to kind of clean it off a little bit. Zoom in on him there. There you can see he's gotten the ink wash on his face. And now let's ink wash. Pretty much everything else is going to be ink washed. Oh, we're going to paint his little light. What color? I want it to be kind of a white light. So I guess white mixed with a little bit of yellow or blue. I don't have a blue paint out. Maybe we'll mix it with a little bit of yellow. I do use yellow sometimes as an accent color for these guys. It's not, I don't know, yellow-white is not the best color for a light, honestly. Oh no, it looks okay there. Once again, I probably should have gone to a smaller brush here. So Battle of Five Armies. Sounds like it's kind of like Epic, but for Lord of the Rings. That's my impression. And I'm not sure anyone was kind of clamoring for that, but maybe some people were. Wonder if anyone actually plays it. All right, well, there's his light. I think it reads as a light, so that works. Maybe it needs a little bit more paint right here. Okay. And then the strategy battle game was expanded with supplements. In 2009, an expansion for the game entitled War of the Ring was released, allowing players to recreate large-scale battles in Middle-earth. In December 2012, Games Workshop released the first wave of models based on the movie The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey. All right, yeah. Then we get into Forge World. It mentions Aeronautica Imperialis again. And then licensed games. It's kind of interesting. It's mostly talking about Hero Quest and Battle Masters. All right. So, and Space Crusade. Okay. Okay, so Space Crusade was also published by Milton Bradley. Interesting. So, Battle Masters. Yeah, Battle Masters, Hero Quest, and Space Crusade were all partnerships with Milton Bradley. So it sounds like it was coming from an era where Games Workshop didn't have as much experience making boxed standalone games as Milton Bradley did. So they were kind of teaming up. And if I understand it right, Games Workshop basically had a contract that would protect their rights to the IPs that were being used, but Milton Bradley would maybe actually publish the game. So Battle Masters was kind of like Warhammer Fantasy Light, and I had fond memories of it as a kid. I played it several times. I had a copy, and it came with like 100 miniatures or more. And you would move around little tiles that had about 5 miniatures each, or 3 in the case of cavalry. And there was an ogre and a cannon, and it was basically chaos versus empire fantasy. And I had such fond memories of it that I recently picked up a copy, a complete copy that I found for sale on Facebook Marketplace by a local person. So I actually drove out to his house in Portland and picked up the game from him, paid cash, I think. And happy to get a complete copy of the game again after all these years. My previous copy I pretty much cannibalized for the miniatures in order to use them for Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of thing. And we are starting the Agrax Earthshade Wash on his cloak now. And as usual, I'm going way too heavy with my ink wash. I'm going to see if I can spread this out so it's not quite as bad. But I have kind of the desire to make kind of like an ultimate set of Battle Masters. Oops, I missed one of his little straps. And so I actually ordered on eBay, I picked up like a plastic bag full of extra miniatures that were just being sold loose from Battle Masters. So I'm going to be able to put more than 5 models on each unit card, and it will be a bit more like Battle of Warhammer Fantasy, as I'll have little blocks of like 10 infantry fighting each other, and it'll be fun to play that game again. I did have the plan to paint it all before I play it, and since after Warhammer my next priority is probably Hero Quest, Battle Masters is after that, so who knows if I'm ever going to get around to painting them, but that's the plan. Whoa, need to like invite some people over to help me paint them, because yeah, my standards are not going to be probably super high for the paint jobs on those, since there's so many miniatures involved. Did you ever see Battle Masters, Bonic? Be curious to know if you had a copy back in the day. And then just goes into Hero Quest and the various expansions for it, and mentions Space Crusade again. So I think we made it to the end of the list. We've talked about Games Workshop specialist games, and I'm curious if we left some out. If you're watching this on YouTube and you notice that there's something missing from the list, let us know. And what's your favorite of all of the above? Kind of in the similar style to Hero Quest, there was another game kind of like that back when I was in the 90s that I picked up called Dragon Strike. Apparently it had nothing to do with Games Workshop, and I wonder if it was Milton Bradley. Maybe they were basically trying to rip off Hero Quest without working with Games Workshop. But Dragon Strike was kind of interesting. Came with an instructional video that was like part animation, part live action. It was a hoot. It's pretty funny to watch that video these days. Kind of hokey, I would say. Well, I ended up pretty much washing everything with Agrax Earthshade. Normally I would use Nuln Oil to wash silver bits, but we're just going to make them look a little dirty. And we'll be pretty close to finished when we get to the end of this ink wash here. What did I want to do? I want to add a little more of a pink highlight to his skin. We might still do that. Bonic, you never heard of Battle Masters? You should look up a picture of it. Came with a ton of miniatures, which was what I loved about it. The actual game itself was kind of basic, kind of like a basic version of Warhammer Fantasy. And it did have kind of a unique system where when units fought, you would roll dice to see like hits and I think armor saves and stuff like that. But when you're activating units, you would draw cards from a deck, and whichever units were depicted on the card, you would get to activate. And so there would be basically cards for each of your units, and then there would also be cards that had multiple units on it. And usually there would be one card that had every unit in your army on it. So when you drew that card, you got to move and attack with everything, but otherwise you only got to use whatever was on the card. And one player could get lucky and basically have their cards get drawn several turns in a row, but because the deck has both sides represented pretty much equally, eventually the luck would turn and your opponent would start to draw all their cards one after another. You never liked the card-based games. I hear that. I'm not a big fan of them either. But I think I mostly like Battle Masters for the nostalgia and the fact that it came with tons of miniatures. Well, I'm leaving his backpack to do the ink wash on last. I think we're just about ready to do that. And I'm just trying not to let the ink wash settle too thick on his robes, because it gets glossy. Doesn't look good. Whoops. We could always add another layer of ink wash if it needs it. Alright, now doing the brass on his backpack. His toxin pack here. And the back of his little surgical light. Well, Bionic, what is your favorite of those specialist games? Would it be Blood Bowl or Battlefleet Gothic or Necromunda? You're going to be locked in a bunker for 30 years and you can only bring one of them with you to play. Which would it be? Oof. Kind of messed up a little bit there. Maybe I can wash that off. Yeah, that worked. Of all the out of print or all the specialists? So I'm going to say it can't be Warhammer 40k or Age of Sigmar or Warhammer Fantasy or Middle-earth Fantasy Battle. Excluding those four, any of the others are on the table. So it could be out of print, could be specialist game. Hey, Nick, good to see you. Yep, we're almost done with the miniature. Painting this Biophagus for my Genestealer cult. Good to see you, Nick. We've been talking about Games Workshop specialist games. So basically the sort of side games that Games Workshop produces besides the main ones like Warhammer 40k and Age of Sigmar. Stuff like Necromunda and Space Hulk and some old stuff like Hero Quest, Battle Masters, and what else? There are naval combat games, there are Titan combat games, skirmish games. There's kind of a surprising number, few I'd never heard of. And I would say the one that I'm kind of like, I guess the few that I'm most tempted by would be like Necromunda, which is a skirmish, skirmish combat game set on the city planet of Necromunda. Blood Bowl, which is like a sports game set in the Warhammer Fantasy universe. Very kind of goofy and funny and lighthearted. And what was the other one I already have miniatures for? Well, I had Space Hulk, but I didn't really love the game. But I love the miniatures. Oh, Warhammer Fantasy Battles, I guess. Middle-earth strategy battles. That's the one. I have some Middle-earth armies that I've never learned to play the game, but I have Uruk-hai and Lorien elves and some hobbits and the Fellowship of the Ring, all painted and pretty much ready to go for that game. So I ought to learn how to play that someday. So Bionic says his absolute favorite would be either Battlefleet Gothic, which is the Warhammer 40k space combat fleet-based game, or Adeptus Titanicus 2018. Hard choice. Nick, Lord of the Rings. I've seen some cool Lord of the Rings mini boxes from Games Workshop. Yeah. Yeah, I love the minis. Oh, and I forgot to mention I also have, for Lord of the Rings, I also have some Gondor infantry. So I think I've painted up the Gondor infantry, the Uruk-hai, the Lorien elves, and I think I've painted most of the Fellowship. So pretty much the only ones I haven't painted are my hobbits. I have like the hobbits from the Fellowship of the Ring, and also like some hobbitry and arms, like town militia kind of for Hobbiton. But I haven't painted those yet. And I don't think I've painted my Gandalf either. So I kind of had the idea that I could use Gandalf with the hobbits. I don't know if that's really a thing you can do in the game. And along with like the hobbits from the Fellowship. Thought that would be kind of fun to have like Merry, Pippin, Frodo, and Sam backed up by Gandalf and like hobbits from the Shire. I assume that at least in like a casual game you can mix and match like that. And I didn't know if it was possible to use Legolas along with the Lorien elves. I guess they would technically be different factions. He would be like a Mirkwood elf. But that was kind of my idea when I picked him up. But I do also have Haldir, the one who leads the elves to their last stand at Helm's Deep in the movie. I don't think that happens in the book. Pretty sure in the book, elves do not show up at Helm's Deep to help the humans. Is that true? Does anyone remember? Star Wars. I don't think the Star Wars stuff's made by Games Workshop, but that is a thing. Star Wars has its own miniature battles game now, and I wonder if I would pick that up. And if so, what would I play? Empire or Rebels? And I assume they probably have like the prequels and sequels too now in the miniatures battle game, but I don't actually know for sure. I think it would be hard to resist going Empire, because like stormtroopers are so cool. And plus if you can get like an ATST and stormtroopers and maybe like scout troopers on speeder bikes, that would just be so cool. And Darth Vader, how did I forget about him? I think I would have fun playing Empire, but would I pick it up? I don't know. Probably not. I feel like Warhammer 40k kind of scratches my sci-fi battle itch, as it were. Kind of doing the finishing touches on the model here. He's got this injector goad and a backpack full of like toxins of various kinds. And kind of fun, his injector goad, if he uses it on like an ally, it gives them some kind of buff. And if he uses it on an enemy, it like inflicts wounds on them. And I've named him Brian in honor of one of the players from Tabletop Titans. Warhammer YouTube show filmed in Bay Area, California. And I got some ink wash where I didn't want it here. I wonder if I can get it out of there. Nope, too late. I did want to give him a little more of a highlight on his face and add just a couple points of light to the red thing on his backpack. So let's go ahead and give him a little highlight on his flesh. Just gonna mix some white scar and some screamer pink. Nick, I'll check next time I'm at the store. Fun. All right. And then I was saying probably the game I would be most tempted to pick up from Games Workshop that I have never played and do not have any models for would be Blood Bowl. Kind of goofy, fun sports game with various fantasy races fighting a no-holds-barred sports game. Kind of like football. And I thought the Beastmen looked pretty cool for that. And I do have a couple of their specialist games waiting for paint. I picked up the new Hero Quest, which is not Games Workshop this time. It's put out by Hasbro. But I have that waiting to be painted, and the old Battle Masters. I picked up a copy of Battle Masters that was complete, plus some extra miniatures to make like an Ultimate Edition. And eventually someday I want to paint that too. I don't know if I'm actually improving this guy as I try to do some touch up here. Kind of messing him up further. Maybe I should try and hit his teeth with a smaller brush. But I'll have to wait for that stuff I just painted to dry first. Guess I could go ahead and give him a little white highlight on his canister of blood on his back here. There we go, just a little something like that. Maybe I should do that on like each little canister and syringe. Give it just a little point of light. There we go. Can add a second one in the back. Well, maybe, sure. There we go. Should I dare try to do a little dot on his glasses? This is some high stakes painting here. Oh no. Oh, it worked. All right. Zoom in so you guys can actually see that there. Managed to give him a couple little highlights in his glasses. Maybe I can hit his teeth with this brush. I'm asking for trouble. You can see him from above there. Had a lot of fun kit bashing this guy from Spare Parts. I could not even tell you where every bit came from on this guy, as there's too many to keep track of, but took quite a little while rooting through the bits bin for the perfect bits for each little part. Oh man, I don't think even this brush is fine enough. I have some smaller brushes. Don't want to bother getting them out. Let's see. Oh man, kind of missed. I think I got his teeth, but I also got the side of his mouth. Do I still have some pink? Not really. Oh, thanks, Bonix. Says looks good, man. I appreciate it. He's pretty much done. We'll show him off on the spinner when I'm after I make a couple more little touch-ups here. See if I can hit both of his cheeks. A little light pink. go. Oh, hey, Nick, are you still playing Dungeons and Dragons with the kids? How's that going? My brother said he's been, my brother lives in England. He said he's been, Nick says, I would use Lord of the Rings goblins in my D&D campaigns for flavor. Oh, okay, so yeah. We were just talking about it. My brother Sean said he's been playing D&D with his daughter and some of her friends, I think, in like kind of a historical game based on where they live in England. So that sounded really fun. My brother's been learning a lot about the history of the area where he lives as part of his metal detecting hobby. And whenever he finds something, he's got to research what the heck did he just find. Let's see, we're about done. I think I want to add a little ink wash to his nameplate and maybe try and dab a little bit of ink in his mouth once his teeth are dry. And I want to fix the light, where I got some ink wash on his light where I didn't mean to. Where did I just put this small brush? Here we go. Well, you guys can tell I'm tired because I'm probably starting to mumble a bit here. Worked construction 8 hours today down in McMinnville, which is like a 40-minute drive. And I had to make that drive, 4 times since I had to come back and pick up some supplies that we forgot. So pretty tired, and I'm going to go work overnight. So I'm going to definitely have to make more coffee. All right, let's fix this guy's lamp. All right. Oof. This brush has seen better days, I think. Having a hard time getting this brush into a really fine tip. I think I got it. I think that's what I wanted to do there. All right, fixed his light. Better stop while I'm ahead. All right, and let's do an ink wash on his nameplate. Oh, here, I guess I'm way too zoomed in now. We'll do a little ink wash on his nameplate and then call him done. Oh no, I wanted to dab a little bit of ink in his mouth too. Oh, and something else I should do is paint a little dot of black on the tip of his gun to make it look like he has a gun barrel. Nice when the model goes pretty quick, because I can actually take the time to do these little touch-ups at the end. I guess we are at, what, 2 hours and 45 minutes just about, so it's been at this for a while. Okay, I think let's focus in on him. There you can see a little bit of black on his gun barrel. That'll do. And okay, let's do ink wash on his nameplate and then dab a little ink in his mouth and we're good. So I want the Nuln Oil for the shade on his nameplate here. And we're just gonna go hot and heavy with it. There we go. I grabbed the wrong brush. I grabbed the small little layer brush instead of the base brush. Okay, but that'll work. Trying to get it about evenly distributed between the two sides. There you can see. And I think that's a little too much. We'll just try to soak up a little bit out of there. All right, that'll work. And then what color ink do I want to use in his mouth? Probably Agrax Earthshade. And here I do want the really small brush for this. So we're going to try to very precisely drop a little bit of ink in his mouth so that his teeth are more clearly defined. Don't touch his nameplate. Gotta remind myself. I think we'll actually zoom in on camera for this. Let's see here. Trying to figure out if it's easier to see this blown up really big on my camera or actually live in person. Let's see. Well, let's just go for it. I think I suddenly do not have enough ink on there. Very hard to get the amount just right. Well, I think I'm calling that good. Well, here is our finished Biophagus, ready to experiment on the on my Genestealer Cultists and my Aberrants. We'll zoom out a bit. Brian the Biophagus, and let's go ahead and put him on the spinner. Why not? Gonna go ahead and drop my paints back in the bucket real quick here. And I'll go ahead and put up the original model. Here is where we started today. And I'll let that play for a second while I rearrange my desk and get my spinner out. Well, it was fun to paint this guy. I feel like he went surprisingly quick, although it did take a couple hours. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at the finished results. Here is our finished Biophagus. I probably should have painted the little skull and crossbones on his backpack a different color, but we left him just in brass or bronze. And I did have a highlight I was going to use on the brass. Let's see. I think it's just called Brass Scorpion. Didn't quite get to that. Could always add it later, but I did give it some nice definition to use the ink wash on it. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with this little two colors of bile, or it looks like he's got poison and blood or something in his two little canisters on his backpack. I'm pretty happy with him. Nick says, have you had time to listen to Decrew yet? You know, I haven't. Maybe I'll listen to it some on my overnight shift tonight. I'm getting ready to go watch the hotel desk, so. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Good to see you, Nick. And I'll be seeing you tomorrow for a game of 40K. Bionic, if you're free, check it out. We're going to be attempting to live stream our first game of 40K on the channel tomorrow around 2 p.m. Pacific time, or actually probably 2:30 Pacific time. And I think I'm playing against German's Sisters of Battle, if I remember. I'll have to double check exactly who I'm playing against tomorrow. And Nick, I'll try to let you know whether or not I'm on for the game, but you can assume I am for now. And if you show up early, I'll probably be asleep. I'm probably not waking up till about 1 o'clock tomorrow. So hope to see you around 1:30, Nick. And Nick's going to help me on the stream, and it should be a fun time. I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks for checking out another painting stream, Challenger Tabletop. And if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like and subscribe. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.